Let's see what's on YouTube today. I'm sad all the crunchy mom, you know, farm crap people are kind of totally on the anti stuff. It's kind of depressing. If you'll move, moving, take my beer. Oh, okay, I have to get in the car in an hour. Two. This is my pretend socializing time. I feel like I made it like a private video or something by accident. Maybe all of mine are. I have an ice wall between me and audience. Yeah, my drinking problem. No. It's mostly chlorophyll and friends. That's all I have left to drink. It tastes better than the coffee. Anyway, there's the ice protests. No one cares about what I think. There's all the sad homesteader people. There's the fintech finance, whatever stuff. And there's the Channel 5 stuff. Is that the name of it? He's interesting. I'm sure he's got some money behind him, not his. And Andrew Callaghan, what is it? What's the name of this guy's channel? Andrew Callahan. Okay. So that feels a lot like Vice News, and Vice News feels a lot like MTV. And I don't know what the antecedents for that would be. I think there's probably definitely some link between the New York City advertising agency kind of stuff depicted in this is drywall mud. I didn't have a coat on the holes. But yeah, I mean the idea of the media is mostly more functional people than me, who, like me, are just putting themselves out there, and then people who are functional at their relationship to some group of people that is promoting them. Why is there a tiny seashell? Where did that come from? Why is it on the floor there? Um, but he definitely seems like he's got some kind of significant backing. I was disappointed when I heard his sort of pro psychiatry video about um, some obscure special snowflake condition that he has, and is sort of like disability rights advocacy kind of perspective he was taking on it, and to do with like uh, doing too many hallucinogens or psychoactive recreational drugs and frying your brain. Um, he was reading off some kind of script, and he was reading off of some kind of script that benefits a certain advocacy perspective around that kind of stuff. Um, People who are, you know, psychonaut assholes, oftentimes their concern is that big companies are going to get their hooks into, shrooms and weed and LSD and all this other stuff, and they're going to turn it into something uh, that's widely marketed for people who shouldn't be given it, and they're going to, adulterate it in some way that makes it um, bad for you. Kind of like with tobacco, or with the refining of opium poppies, to create a class of products off of something that is just a natural resource. Um, it's sort of like, you can teach people to make their own bread, or make some other kind of simple set of steps, kind of food product, at home. And when they do it that way, there's one kind of supply chain and one kind of logistical network where people can grow a plant, and they can sell a plant in a form that's close enough to what it was, that you're not really um, introducing grievous harm through manufacturing processes. But when you standardize something and create like a production line, um, an example would be something like a battery powered car, where you would use, standardized kind of battery for everything. And because you were making these things in mass quantities, the potential for many people to be affected by the same kind of defect, or unforeseen consequence of the manufacturing process, like with Agent Orange and dioxins, would be astronomically greater than individuals fucking up in their own kitchens, uh, refining a compound, or uh, working some kind of raw material into a usable form. Um, but yeah, Andrew Callahan seems like a shill. I don't. I don't think he's the worst person on earth. I don't think he's the absolute enemy. I do think that, if I'm just looking through his stuff, um, it looks like he's taking kind of a centrist slash leftist perspective, where he's consistently portraying, um, you know, sort of white conservative, uh, whatever, you know, generic opposition as, with suspicion, casting aspersions on it, and doing things to, you know, buttress or support sort of left talking point positions. So the ICE stuff, Minnesotans are fed up. Um, Minneapolis residents versus ICE. Nick Shirley bad. Um, Debunking race-based IQ statistics. Whites only and all white in air quotes. Um, there's more of a, and I think this is kind of the sort of hood YouTube people who report on like black community, black crime stuff and gang stuff. Like the one who's got a kind of a I forget what the name of his channel, but there's one that's kind of, he does all kinds of investigative journalism themed ones. And he talks about all the different types of YouTube pseudo journalists who kind of came from driving around hoods and interviewing people in a hood and just kind of like getting out of their car or pulling their car up to people on the sidewalk and saying, hey, what's this neighborhood like? Is it safe? Can you tell me about it? Is this the hood? That kind of stuff. And he seems like he came from that. You know, here's who did little Uzi Vert want to sample. There's a quote or a caption on the screen that says, not enough microdose. You know. So it comes off a little bit safe sleazy, I guess, is how I would describe it. He's even got the little mustache. You know, there's a quote that says, when you let the intrusive thoughts win. He reminds me a lot of Jerry Springer. He seems to have the same kind of emotional distance from the pores or whatever that are in his audience. But this is a plank of the current perspective. Like I said, the sort of approachable MILF kind of chubby mom, crunchy equivalent of that, where you've got these women who are very kind of suburban minivan, you know, mommy kind of seeming. They do all their stuff usually from like an anti big government, anti, you know, global profiteer agriculture regulation kind of thing, where they're trying to be a watchdog on, you know, food dyes and, you know, additives in food and, you know, the you know, the talking points against like big agriculture, the big meat packing stuff is really popular. But I mean, I'm kind of sad to see all of them immediately jump behind the ICE protest stuff, because it seems like if they're all saying the exact same thing at the exact same time, there's someone, you know, and something behind that paying them to do that. There is so much of this stuff now. There are literally tens of thousands of people doing professional, semi-professionally produced investigative journalism, you know, deep dive bullshit. Some of it's on, you know, here's two in my feed that are about the same thing. You know, how corporations convinced America that litter is our fault. It's current affairs, and I don't know if that's associated with the old mainstream. There's Hank Green. I don't know if he gets money from like, you know, PBS or whatever he's doing. There's an actual reason you can't recycle plastic. What is soil punk and the forest and the trees? That's sort of probably a little bit further into the crunchosphere. Current Affairs has 823 views, so it might be legacy media trying to produce That's music. So, who owns the Current Affairs? Official video content from Current Affairs magazine. Uh, Nathan J. Robinson explains why I should immediately go there and subscribe. I don't think it's like um, The Economist. Um, this is a magazine of politics and culture. Let's just go do the AI bullshit for fun. What is the name for the art of media and journalism, like foreign EI? Was it Foreign Affairs? I don't remember the name of it. For the Economist. While The Economist Prime is primarily a weekly news magazine, Foreign Affairs is technically a journal. Journalists focus on academic rigor and in-depth policy analysis. They are often published by think tanks or nonprofit organizations. For example, Foreign Affairs is the publication of the Council on Foreign Relations. I think that's a Cold War relic. Current Affairs, International Relations, periodicals. Uh, Periodicals, blah, blah, blah. International Relations Journal is more specific subdiscipline focusing on global security, trade, diplomacy. Intellects are high-end journalism. In the media industry, there are sometimes analysis-driven reporting or opinion leader media. Advocacy or think tanks. Because these publications often present specific editorial perspectives, The Economist self-described economic newsroom, Foreign Affairs focus on U.S. foreign policy, classified as advocacy media or policy-centric media. What are a few dozen other examples of widely circulated analysis and opinion which would be known in policy making circles? Uh, Foreign policy, a more punchy magazine style counterpart to Foreign Affairs, high circulation in the U.S. State Department. The Diplomat, widely recognized as best-in-class source for geopolitical security analysis specific to the Asia-Pacific region. International Affairs, published by Chatham House in London, is considered one of the world's leading peer-reviewed journals for international international IR, whatever IR is. There's a scholarly journal called Geopolitics, Le Monde Diplomatique. Uh, the national interest, international security, often ranked number one academic journal in the field, published by Harvard Kennedy School. War on the Rocks, digital first platform for featuring analysis primarily of military officers and defense practitioners. Survival, the Journal of the International Institute for Strategic Studies, focusing on global strategic shifts. CARESnet, C4ISRNET, a trade publication essential for those working on defense technology, cyber warfare, and intelligence systems. Contemporary Security Policy, high impact journal, frequently cited for its analysis of modern warfare and non traditional threats. Financial Times, particularly its Lex column and Big Read features, drive daily global economic discourse. Wall Street Journal Opinion, review of international political economy. Ripe, Barron's, Project Syndicate, Politico, The Atlantic, CQ Weekly, Congressional Quarterly. Granular nonpartisan tracking of every piece of legislation's progress through committee. National Journal was maybe one of the ones that the Brookings Review. Okay, Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, Doomsday Clock, Wired. Wow, Wired is now a policy uh, publication. Journal of Policy Analysis and Management, Journal of Democracy. Okay, who are major private organizations and parts of governments funding these publications? And do they invest outside of legacy media in social media influencers, creators, and internet journalism? Major private organizations and governmental bodies provide significant funding to policy-centric publications and are increasingly investing in social media and digital journalism to shape public opinion and policy discourse. Private funding primarily comes from large philanthropic foundations, corporations, and wealthy individuals or families. Foundations and trusts. Organizations like the Ford Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Pew Charitable Trust, and the Open Society Foundations provide substantial grants for journalism, often with specific goals related to global development, governance, human rights, or technology policy. Individual and family interests. Publications like The Economist are owned by private companies with unique structures designed to protect independence, with major shareholders including the Agnelli, Rothschild, and Cadbury families. Think tanks and advocacy groups. Many publications are affiliated with nonprofit think tanks. Foreign Affairs is published by the Council on Foreign Relations, which themselves accept donations and corporate sponsorships to fund their research and publications. Government funding is often directed towards supporting independent media abroad, ensuring national security research, or promoting specific public interest communications. USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy provide substantial foreign assistance funding to independent media organizations and journalists in other countries, as do the Department of State's various programs. DoD is a top source of funding for research organizations like the RAND Corporation, which operates federally funded research and development centers and produces reports that inform defense policy. Multilateral initiatives. Governments also contribute to initiatives like the International Fund for Public Interest Media, which is supported by 17 governments and philanthropies to boost the resilience of independent media globally. Yes, we want independent media to be resiliently boosted by 17 large, gigantic governments and philanthropy organizations. Governments worldwide, including state and local U.S. agencies, formally collaborate with social media influencers for public interest communications. This strategy was notably accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic to educate the public and counter misinformation. Funding extends to digital native news sites and policy analysis platforms like War on the Rocks or The Diplomat, as well as general platforms like Politico, which utilize websites, podcasts, and newsletters to reach targeted policy audiences. Think tanks and media organizations leverage platforms like YouTube, LinkedIn, and even TikTok, LinkedIn, to produce engaging, accessible policy content and generate ad revenue to build brand recognition. Does the YouTube channel that's it. Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan, have any relationship to legacy policy funding or institutions or media groups. Let's see what it says. Remains primarily independent digital media venture that has maintained specific high-profile commercial relationships with legacy institutions. He is engaged in major deals with traditional institutions. HBO and A24. Callahan partnered with HBO and the production company A24 for his 2022 documentary This Place Rules, which focused on the January 6th Capitol riot. This relationship placed his work within one of the most established legacy media ecosystems. His previous brand, All Gas No Brakes, was owned and funded by Doing Things Media, a digital media conglomerate. Callahan famously split from them after a contract dispute to gain full independence for Channel 5. In late 2025, Callahan disclosed that he had been working with the New York Times on an op-ed about independent news, but the paper ultimately chose not to publish it. The channel is not funded by policy institutions, but instead operates on a direct-to-consumer and sponsored model. Approximately 80% of the channel's income comes from a Patreon community of roughly 30,000 members, sharing an estimated $100,000 to $150,000 per month. The channel accepts high-paying ad reads from digital native brands such as Ground News and NordVPN, typically pay around $20,000 per video for successful releases, and independent films. Callahan's relationship with legacy media is often adversarial yet nuanced. In 2025, he publicly criticized new media pundits for having a parasitic relationship with legacy outlets, noting that independent creators often rely on ground-level reporting of traditional journalists while simultaneously mocking them. He has positioned Channel 5 as a gateway for audiences who have entirely lost trust in traditional news sources. Gee, that seems like something that those traditional news sources would be incredibly interested in having a stake in and funding. How does his career and placement in the media ecosystem compare to the history of the Vice News organization and brand. Okay. Okay, in 2026, Andrew Callahan and his Channel 5 brand occupies space that many media analysts view as a descendant of the original Vice News model. Ah ha 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 ha. I'm being glazed by the AI. While they share a gonzo style approach to immersive boots on the ground reporting, their trajectories represent two different eras of digital media. Callahan is frequently compared to early Vice circa 2014 for his focus on authenticity and underground subcultures. Vice became a global brand by sending young, unpolished reporters into conflict zones or unhinged social events, rejecting the stiff persona of traditional news anchors. The Callahan evolution. Callahan uses similar naive interviewer persona reminiscent of Louis Theroux to elicit candid responses from people often ignored or mocked by legacy media. He's even stated that Vice once made journalism cool but lost its credibility as it became more corporate. VC scale versus creator independence. Uh, Primary difference lies in how each entity matured financially. Vice Media followed a VC-fueled growth model, raising billions from giants like Disney and Fox to reach a mass media scale. This led to a 2023 bankruptcy and the eventual cessation of content on Vice.com in 2024. But is that just obfuscating that the same people are providing the direction and financing or operational support? If it quacks like a duck. Vice eventually became a legacy institution itself with a TV network and high level political access. How does this fit with organizations on the right, like Drudge Report, Bright Art, the production capacity of profession camera operators, technical staff, editors, um, broadcasting standards compliance, people who obtain permits for filming or arrange interviews. Does the media industry run on a common collective workforce and platform of cap collective workforce platform? investment in things like studio equipment and satellite vans, helicopter pilots, are there conglomerates or institutions that maintain that infrastructure? What about printing presses? How many companies still have the operating equipment to produce large print circulation in runs large enough to reach a large portion of the reading public in a day. Yes, the media industry runs on a collective workforce and platform of massive capital investment. Major institutions maintain the infrastructure necessary for professional news gathering and distribution. News bureaus and studios. Conglomerates like News Corp, Paramount Global, NBC Universal, and the Walt Disney Company own studios, satellite uplink trucks, helicopter services, and maintain large staffs of camera operators, technical directors, and legal teams for compliance and permits. Shared services. Networks often share resources during major events. The White House Press Corps, for example, shares a physical space and pooled video feeds. This prevents every organization from needing its own satellite van on every single street corner. Arranging interviews with heads of state or filming in hostile environments requires significant capital and logistical support that an independent creator cannot match. These networks rely on extensive insurance, security details, and long-standing diplomatic access. Outlets like the Drudge Report and Breitbart News operate on a hybrid model that differs from traditional broadcast news. Drudge Report. This is fundamentally a news aggregator with almost zero production costs. It relies purely on curation and links out to legacy sites, requiring only a web server and a curator. Breitbart News. This site operates more like a professional digital newsroom, but it has minimal broadcast infrastructure. It invests in writers, editors, and web developers, utilizing some studio space for video segments, but it doesn't run satellite vans or dispatch global camera crews in the traditional broadcast sense. Their capital investment is in servers and digital marketing, not physical broadcast equipment. The world of large-scale print production is the ultimate example of heavy capital investment and consolidation. The number of companies that can produce large circulation print documents, millions of copies overnight, is very small. The industry is highly consolidated into a few massive commercial printing giants and the in-house facilities of major national newspapers. Companies like Gannett Publishing Services, which prints for Gannett-owned public papers and others. I don't want to have my feet covered. Yes. Okay. How big is the fish? I don't know how they're going to fit in the freezer. With the chicken? Hmm. All right. Well, look, I'll take a shower and I'll go see if there's another one up there. I just went up there and got the other stuff this morning. Uh, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Goodbye. Stupid Alaskan salmon. Nah. A few elite national newspapers, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Financial Times, maintain their own massive high speed presses and strategically located regional printing plants across the country to enable same day delivery. The industry has seen massive consolidation and closures. Presses are incredibly expensive to buy, operate, and maintain, requiring specialized staff, massive rolls of paper, and high energy costs. The surviving companies run their equipment 24/7 with extremely optimized logistics to be profitable. Would independent creators be able to um, exist? I don't want to say exists. Get permits and security permissions to interview uh, high level VIPs that require background checking and clearance and permits without a without the help of specialized legal professionals who probably get most of their business from established legacy media and institutional power. What kind of legal professionals specialize in representing and negotiating on behalf of journalists and media? And are there any famous um, inter which reputationally dominate the field. Badoom badoom. Reuters? A distinct class of boutique firms and nonprofit organizations has emerged to support independent and digital-first journalism. Independent creators can obtain high-level clearances such as White House, State Department, or international diplomatic credentials, but the process is highly formalized. The assignment requirement. Most government and high-security entities require a letter of assignment on official letterhead from a recognized media outlet. Independent creators often bypass this by forming their own legal entities that function as recognized outlets or by joining professional unions. Many independents obtain credentials through organizations like the National Writers Union, which provides domestic and international press passes for a fee, approximately $59 to $99, to members who document their work. Agencies like the FBI or Secret Service conduct background checks regardless of institutional backing. For creators, these checks focus on criminal history and legitimacy of intent rather than who their lawyer is. Several types of legal professionals specialize in the media space, ranging from First Amendment litigators to entertainment and media transactional lawyers. First Amendment and media defense. These lawyers specialize in protecting journalists from subpoenas, libel suits, and prior restraint, censorship. They often work for nonprofits that provide free pro bono assistance to independents. Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press, RCFP, provides a free legal hotline and pro bono representation for independent journalists. Media Defense, an international organization solely focused on the legal defense of citizen and independent journalists globally. Entertainment and talent lawyers. These professionals focus on the commercial side, negotiating talent agreements, distribution deals, and production permits. The following firms are recognized as the gold standard in the media and entertainment industry, often representing both legacy giants and high-profile independent creators. Ballard Spahr, National Law Firm of the Year for First Amendment Media Law. They have as clients major news outlets, digital publishers, and filmmakers. Latham and Watkins, a global leader in international media arbitration and transactional work, high-stakes mergers, global licensing, and complex IP. Gibson Dunn is a top tier for media entertainment. They're transactional, major studios, streaming platforms, and large-scale financing. Loeb and Loeb, ranked national tier 1 for motion pictures and television law, talent production companies, and multimedia developers. Arent Fox Schiff, recognized as go-to for nonfiction television and news gathering, celebrities, movie studios, and independent producers. Emerging independent-friendly models. In 2026, divide between corporate media and creators is being replaced by specialized trust lanes. Some legacy firms are opening boutique wings specifically to handle creator IP and fandom overlaps, allowing creators to maintain control while using the firm's reputational weight to secure high-level access. So, my question is, how much of what I see when I click on YouTube and I see people who have reach in the hundreds of thousands or the low millions, who promote content that's political, how much of that is connected back to some of this institutional stuff? One of my big questions has been, why is there this constellation of rapid fire stuff around like politicized rank and file opinion? There is I forget the name of the dad from All in the Family, that the Peter Griffin character is kind of based on. Archie Bunker. Okay, so there's like an Archie Bunker consumer economy where you're trying to make content for grumpy people stuck in their house who have opinions that nobody cares about, and the a lot of the leftist content of, anti-racism and, orange man bad kind of stuff is focused on sort of the female, middle class, bleeding heart kind of like I'm nicer than other people because I care about things that don't affect me, um, version of that. Whereas, the and you see the same dynamic in the characters, in that 1970s Jewish sitcom. Um, that's something that they've been making stuff for and assuming those kinds of demographics for over 5 decades, probably. So, to say that there are probably people who go to work and try and figure out how to produce news content that makes some group of people in authority look racist or heavy handed or abusive, um, and tries to paint things in the tradition of sort of the civil rights movement of pacifistically intervening in, the unfair treatment of some disadvantaged group, um, like solidarity. There's obviously a market for that because that's been a way that things have been presented consistently by certain forms of journalism and uh, you know advocacy and so forth, uh, for decades and decades and decades and decades across generations. Um, it goes back at least as far as missionary Christianity and the abolitionist movement, and probably has other antecedents even before that, in the scientific enlightenment or the Protestant Revolution or various different things like that. Um, and that's just within, you know, white European, Western countries. There would be versions of that everywhere else, to do with kind of religious schism and, um, appeals to authority and appeals to morality and things like that. And there's so much of that on dumb, boring, teenager, 20 something, 6, 7 kind of social media. All these guys with the Twitch or the streaming platform kind of stuff. Um, the big thing that I see too much just from the generic feed is the whole Asmon Gold versus Hassan Piker kind of thing that's sort of set up as kind of a professional wrestling kayfabe of politics. They're both kind of very much like what I remember from like the '90s WWE, tag team wrestlers who were kind of scrawny guys with long hair or scraggly looking or whatever, and they seem to be fulfilling the same kind of roles and consistently beefing with each other and creating, the same kind of narrative plot lines that you would see in like, uh, kayfabe scripted professional wrestling. You see that in e-drama social media, playing out, and the political spectrum is now being kind of led in the direction of Kai Cenat and I Show Speed kind of being the thought leaders for sort of kind of like an idiocracy kind of, notion of how to reach an audience. There's almost no, humor or entertainment media that does not jump into, politicization and try and take a political stake, which reflects profound bifurcation of the market, I guess. Can you be a right wing skateboarder or a left wing, uh, you know, catfish noodler? Can you go out into the culture, and can you have these consumer hobbies that are about buying stuff at a specialty store in the mall or something like that, and be apolitical? Food now, right? If you want to eat fancy, you know, specialty farmer kind of stuff, uh, can you be apolitical and go into those spaces and not get pushback? Um, Most of this seems to have some kind of, are you a dog person or a cat person kind of algorithmic desire to filter you out as fast as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to say, would you, vote for a dragon or a unicorn? Um, Everybody's saying the same shit. The disposable home epidemic, why new houses are built to rot. Mac Rogers, real estate broker. You'll own nothing and be happy from Edison Motors, which I think was this uh, small business startup, in Canada or something, trying to build a semi truck. Nobody builds walls like this anymore. Aged skills. Why online health advice is so terrible, from Anna Fern. Uh, and there's naturally a picture of RFK. Um, my my wife hates the idea of the debunker and the debunkosphere. And her simple litmus test for whether someone is, fake and in somebody's pocket and a sycophant for, you know, all that kind of stuff, is whether they are completely welcoming of all the fantasists. If you say something critical of alkaline water or magnetic bracelets or copper bracelets or something, or healing energy crystals, or Reiki healers, or whatever it is, if there's some kind of person enthusiastically saying that something might work and do something helpful, if you are criticizing someone who is trying to market their participation as the desire to be helpful, you are mean. And that means that you can be attacked. Now, unless you are encouraging people to be uh, sort of cooperative with the state, you can be a debunker of the Federal Reserve. You can be a debunker of something that the government puts in the water. You can be a debunker of a vaccine. You can be a debunker of public education. You can be a debunker of anything that is mandated. Um, I mean, I guess you could be a debunker of income tax. She hasn't ever demonstrated some kind of absolute of some of that. But, um, all of that is to her, that's a litmus test. Now, there's a huge amount of, uh, you know, consistency with some of that. People who tell you that someone is doing something unscientific or commercially fraudulent or whatever because they don't know the right answer. Um, like a independent person who's making something, but they're not making it the right way. Like the pink slime stuff. The idea is that's immediately associated with the left, and that the left is the only part of this equation that's going to put limits on stuff like that. If I told you you were putting together a gun wrong and that you were going to, create like the wrong back pressure or, you know, wear on the barrel or, just some kind of technical thing like that, and I was couching it in the language of just leave it to the professionals or just leave it to the you know the regulators, um, or the state gun barrel inspector, um, maybe she would take it as leftist criticism, if it seemed to be associated close enough with something like gun control. But if you were critiquing somebody manufacturing, homemade guns or something, or 3D printed guns, I think culturally that would be usually seen as right wing or conservative, just because you were talking about something that was associated with the the right, or with civil liberties, uh, radicalists or whatever. Um, but anyway, it is suspiciously uh, telling to me how consistently, it's just probably a function of the algorithmic stuff. It's like the way women present themselves in the thumbnail, or in order to get clicks. Um, People are doing the same thing ideologically in a world of disenfranchised or disaffected or disappointed consumers, or you know aspiring uh, comfortable people. Um, Everyone is talking about why things are bad and why everything is shit. AI and the death of the career ladder, Patrick Boyle. There's an entire sort of ecosystem of financial and economic media and journalism and all of that, that's primarily about why it's all shitty. Um, don't make this mistake: the 25 places to avoid moving to in the United States. World According to Briggs. He does some of the same kind of stuff. He does kind of the version of hood journalism where you don't get out of your car and you just drive through a bad town or whatever, and just talks about how shitty things are in general, in some kind of real estate market sense. The Gen Z religious revival isn't real. Religion for breakfast. I forget if that was the guy who he got fired from his university, or was that a different one? Uh, I forget which one got. I don't see it right up on the. But there's a lot of people who care about this stuff. There's all these, young 20-something Zoomers who talk about the Russian Orthodox Church like it's, the Dallas Cowboys or something, or owning a an AR. Um, it's like the sort of terminally online equivalent of wearing, like mossy oak everywhere or something. It's just a signifier. Um, if you primarily exist on like Discord servers, it doesn't really matter what hat you have on because nobody sees it. Here's one that says West Virginia has run out of money. I thought that happened Oh, they got 1.5 million dollars. Cost $3 million. That's how it really works. It's cheaper to build something new than it is to fix it. Strong towns. This is another one that's weird. The 15-minute cities thing, the not just bikes thing, the strong towns, like the urban planning people. Why did urban planning turn into like, being a member of the uh, Rainbow Gestapo? Why did that get picked as like this plank where, and it's like the most yuppie middle aged looking thing to have like a strong opinion about. It's like every single person who has a strong opinion about this, they have a Subaru with a bike rack on it, or they have, uh, they're people who close on a house, and this is how they try and advocate in their new community. It's a cultural identity. They're dressed in similar ways. They've got similar beards. I don't think it's the same guy. Uh, they've got kind of a mousy librarian kind of uh, elementary school teacher kind of professional dress code kind of look. They're astoundingly white. Um, they're people who might listen to math rock, or they might go to one of those places that sells uh, hipster hamburgers. Um, but why urban planning? Why did okay, the movie I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang is about somebody who wants to be a civil engineer, and it's also an extremely left wing movie. So maybe this is not a new thing, and maybe is there an historical connection between civil engineering, uh, urban planning, academic history, and leftist political movements. Was the film I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang uh, typical of any tenuous connection between uh, building cities and social policy attitudes. The do. What does it think? Other people? Tell me what the other people said. Thing that reads everything for me. Yes, there is a deep historical connection between what I thought of the New Deal and the WPA, between academic development of urban planning and leftist or progressive era political movements. In the early 20th century, the discipline of building cities was inextricably linked to social policy aimed at correcting the perceived failures of unregulated capitalism. Urban planning is a formal academic and professional field emerged from 19th century social reform movements that sought to solve the urban crisis, overcrowding, disease, and pollution through state intervention and collective design. Socialist roots, the Garden City movement, founded by Ebenezer Howard in Greenbelt, over here where I live, is one of these things. Ebenezer Howard in 1898 was explicitly designed to incorporate socialist and anarchist principles. Howard's vision of town-country communities included collective land ownership, where management was governed by the public rather than private interests to break the stronghold of capitalism, so the shared garden spaces of today. The progressive era of the 1890s to the 1920s. In the US, the new planning competed with the purely aesthetic City Beautiful style. It was driven by reformers, engineers, and architects who believed a scientific, technocratic approach to governance could cure society's ills. These planners often aligned with labor movements and early civil rights activists to advocate for regulated housing, sanitation, and public transportation. Technocracy versus socialist project. Many 20th century planners saw the reconstruction of cities as a way to transition from cities built for capital accumulation to cities built for human flourishing, a core tenet of various socialist projects. I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang is a quintessential example of how early 20th century social policy and the engineering profession were linked in the public imagination. Civil engineering is a social ideal. The protagonist, James Allen, is a World War I veteran who rejects a soul-crushing factory job for an entrepreneurial career in civil engineering and construction. In the film, engineering represents the capitalist ideal of building in progress, the literal act of creating the physical infrastructure of a modern, redeemed society. Social policy attitudes. The film served as a stark critique of the barbaric Southern penal system, specifically Georgia's chain gang system, which essentially utilized enslaved convict labor for public infrastructure projects like road building. Tenuous connection. The film highlights a tension. While the protagonist views building as a path to personal and societal redemption, the state uses that same building process as a tool for brutal social control and cheap labor exploitation. The film's bleak ending, where the innocent engineer is forced into a life as a permanent fugitive, underscores a loss of belief in the era's democratic capitalism and its ability to provide justice through social programs. Is there a straight line through those social reform movements in academia 100 years ago and the rise of 15-minute city advocates and social media, like not just bikes or strong towns that politic against Strodes or for parking requirements for business that reduce urban density slash public transit bike lane and passenger rail advocacy groups. Do. In 2026, media and urban planning analysts identify clear intellectual and political lineage connecting the social reform movements of 100 years ago to modern new urbanist movements championed by social media influencers like Not Just Bikes and organizations like Strong Towns. The straight line you identify as the persistent academic and political struggle to balance human scale living against industrial and car centric expansion. Early 20th century reform, Garden City movement, neighborhood unit plan pioneered by Clarence Perry in the 1920s recognized as direct precursors to the 15-minute city. These early movements sought to improve public health and social cohesion by ensuring daily necessities were within walking distance of the home. Mid-century suburban experiment introduced Strode's, blah, blah, blah. The Jane Jacobs era, activist Jane Jacobs' rejection of top-down modernist urban renewal in the 1960s is cited as the foundational philosophy for modern groups like Strong Towns. Modern New Left Urbanism 2020s movement has rebranded these historical ideals for the digital age, focusing on 15-minute cities, parking requirement reforms, and transit-oriented developments. That's just the same stuff I said. Jason Slaughter, this YouTube channel specializes in comparing North American infrastructure to Dutch urban design. It has partnered with Strong Towns to create educational courses on land use and municipal finance. Charles Marone, a nonprofit that argues against suburban sprawl, primarily on financial resiliency grounds rather than just social ones. They advocate for ending highway expansion, eliminating parking mandates that reduce density, incremental housing development, allowing multifamily units by right. Connections to YIMBY and the highest profile advocates of multi-unit residential zoning reform in single family dwelling zoning. Who are the groups spending the most money on housing, zoning, and residential construction lobbying and what was I going to say? Activism. Yeah, blah, blah. In 2026, the Yes in My Backyard movement is the primary modern successor to 20th century social reform movements focused on urban engineering. It bridges historical leftist goals of collective well-being with a 21st century abundance philosophy that seeks to lower costs by removing regulatory barriers to housing. Activists and leaders: Senator Scott Wiener, D. San Francisco, the nation's most prominent pro-housing legislator. In late 2025, he secured the passage of SB 79, the Abundant and Affordable Homes Near Transit Act, a landmark law that overrides local zoning to allow 7-story apartment buildings near major transit stations. YIMBY Action, a national grassroots network that mobilizes for zoning reform, including upzoning single-family neighborhoods for multi-unit dwellings. This is the most Pete Buttigieg kind of. This is my problem with it. It just seems so, like let's do this and let's go like operate Airbnb and a antique shop and raise our cats as our children, kind of thing. Uh, California YIMBY, a powerhouse advocacy group that sponsors statewide bills like SB 4 and 79 to make use by right housing a reality on transit adjacent and institutional lands. Jason Slaughter from Not Just Bikes, technically content creator, uh, primary recruitment tool for the YIMBY movement. Lobbying for housing and zoning reform is a multi-billion-dollar industry divided between traditional industry trade groups and new effective altruism mega funds. Okay, NARA, or whatever, National Association of Realtors, number one lobbying spender in 2024 and 25, maintains the largest war chest to promote pro-realtor candidates and inventory initiatives. National Association of Home Builders, high-level federal lobbying to reduce impact fees and streamline building codes. Open Philanthropy Abundance and Growth Fund launched its $120 million fund in 2025, backed by Dustin Moskovitz, specifically to bankroll YIMBY groups and zoning reform activists over 3 years. California YIMBY Action, significant regional spending. They often receive funding from Silicon Valley tech leaders. Stripes Patrick Collison to drive legislative upzoning victories. Housing Policy Council, consistently one of the top lobbying clients in DC, focusing on the secondary mortgage market and housing finance stability. Movement is currently facing a second wave of opposition. While SB 79 similar laws have legalized denser housing, opponents in 2026 are using the CEQA lawsuits, environmental reviews, and infrastructure strain arguments to block construction in court. Conversely, some housing justice activists on the far left criticize YIMBYs as being a front for developers who prioritize market rate luxury units over deep affordability. This is the most gay and homo nerd thing you could possibly spend your old married couple uh, post youth doing would be to go to those people who go to meetings for like local government, like zoning board stuff. Oh, that's like church if church was about being a prick just exclusively. No, I gotta get in the shower.